Hello, everybody. I'd like to call our April 28th Policy Committee meeting to order. We have no public comments, so I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Graham so we can get started on our policies to review.
Thank you. So we have 4 policies tonight. We are going to start with GCCAAA, which is the sick leave bank. I do not come up with the lettering system for that, but this policy is a policy that the board put into effect last year to start a sick leave bank or restart a sick leave bank here in the district. And so we have been doing that for a year now. I wanted to kind of give you a little update on how the bank has been going. And then we have a couple recommended changes just based on a year's worth of experience, some of the terms that we felt like needed a little clarity in the policy, things like that. So just for your information, we initially had 991 people apply to be part of the sick bank. We had set a requirement in the policy that at least 30% of the district employees had to participate in the bank to have it be active. And so that was just over the 30% mark. And so that was how many applied. We ended up with about 980 days by the time there were a few people who applied who didn't qualify because by the time the day was deducted, they didn't have any days left or something of that nature. So about 980 days. So far, we have had 9 people apply to use the bank. And the bank has awarded 107 days. However, only about 24 of those days have actually been used so far. So some of those cases were very recent. They just came before the board maybe 2 weeks ago, I think we met. So people may not have used those days. Others of the days are intermittent. So people may not need their leave consecutively. They may have intermittent leave. And so we award them up to a certain number of days. And so the bank goes ahead and pulls those days in case they are used, but they haven't necessarily been used yet. So it is good for us to report that thus far it has been very self-sustaining. We have plenty of days, which is a good place to be because we weren't really sure how many days were going to be in the bank and how many people were going to use it, that sort of thing. So that's just sort of a little information for you all on kind of how it's going. And then you can see here from the sick leave bank policy, one of the first recommendations that we wanted to make is to add a member of the finance department to the sick leave bank board. That's the group who reviews the applications. Because it is so closely tied to payroll, we found that as we went along, we had a lot of questions about payroll, where people were in their billing, et cetera. So we thought that it would be beneficial and talked to Ms. Minier, and she thinks that would be a good idea as well. So we are recommending that we add that. We also just wanted to clarify some of the dates there. So you'll see when the sick leave board begins, what the term of service is. In the definition section, we wanted to clear up section A2 actually had a carryover from a model that we were using that said his or her immediate family member. But our policy is only applicable to district employees, not to illnesses of family members. So we just wanted to remove that for clarity. That's the only place in the policy where it referenced a family member. So we wanted to fix that. The other information or the other proposed changes here are primarily just to clarify. If you all want me to go through them step by step, I can, or we can just let me know if you have a question.
You go through for the family members. So are you saying, was that the intent of that or why it was in there? Because they could use it if their family member had an illness and they cannot use it if the family member has an illness?
Yes. So some districts that we had looked at the proposed policies allowed you to use it similar to FMLA for your own personal illness or for the illness of a family member. Our discussion when we implemented the bank was that because we didn't know how widely it was going to be used, we felt like it should be limited to illness of employees for now. And then after we have a couple of years worth of data about what the usage looks like, then maybe we would extend it. But I think there was some concern that if it was opened up too broadly, the days might be used up before people.
That's what I was going to ask you.
So that was just actually a typo. It was from one of the policies that we had looked at. It got left in there.
I just wasn't sure if there'd be a benefit to including it, but you're saying we should try it out for a couple of years before we go.
I mean, certainly, I think employees would consider that a benefit, but it would make a lot more people eligible to use days. And so I think that it is something that we have to consider how many days the bank can sustain.
Yes. Let it go a little bit longer before we incorporate it.
Is that, then you might build up more days, is that what you're thinking? Or-
Well, because we just barely made the 30% threshold, if people were using it for family members, they might use up the days sooner than the 1 year period that the bank runs for. So we just wanted a few years of data to see whether or not we felt like the bank could sustain that. I mean, certainly we could reconsider whenever that's appropriate, but we just wanted to make sure that we understood kind of what the usage would look like.
Do we know if we've had anyone ask about?
I believe we have had one, maybe 1 or 2 applications. Yeah, for that. And they do still qualify for FMLA, but FMLA is not paid.
Well, I think it's very wise of you to give it some time before you decide. Because other than that, we could end up, I was around when we had it first. So you could end up with no days being available for the employees themselves, and that was the purpose of it.
Yeah.
Do you want me to
ask you another question? And I'm not necessarily in order. So our employees, you know, you have some employees, when I was working, there was an employee who never, I think in her whole 40-something years, she may have taken 5 days. And they had to be something major. I taught her son, and he came to school sick, and I said, so why are you here? And he looked at me like I had 3 heads. He said, I've never missed a day. So that was a family thing, and it was lovely. But if I remember correctly, she probably donated a number of her days. So those that have an abundance of days, are they allowed to donate those things with no stipulation? It's just that they have them, and so can they just donate them on their own?
So that's a great question that we get a lot. Right now, we have not allowed that. I would let Ms. Vivier weigh in if she wants to, but I think that the concern is that any leave days that are out there that are not used are always considered a financial liability for the district. And so if the bank absorbed all of the unused leave days, that would be a large financial liability for the district. I'm explaining that right. So, so right now we are limiting it to only taking the 1 day per employee who wants to participate. That is something that we can continue to assess, as we have more participants and, if the district were able to take on more of that liability in terms of the leave days, but it would be a financial liability.
I didn't know about that aspect. Then the other question I had was, when it says you can only use 90 days, allow 90 days for your entire career. Say, for instance, if this person who had worked 40-something years and they used maybe 15 of their days, maybe in the first 20 years. And then the next 10 years, which is about 30 now, they used 10. So what happens? So they don't get to basically give additional days a year in order to make sure.
You're talking about them donating days? The 90?
No, don't you give
your
Do you
days?
give one every year or you only give once?
You give one every year. You have to sign up every year to continue to participate. So we are about to push that information out. The enrollment period will start on May 1st. And so we'll push that out to all the district employees and let them know that if you participated this past year and you want to continue participating, you have to donate a new day. And then you will continue essentially each year on July 1, your day will be drawn out of your leave account. And then you are in the leave bank for that year.
So over 30 years, you could have donated 30 days.
Yes,
But you could use it to 90.
but you can use up to 90.
You don't just take your day for day.
Okay.
I think that's what you're trying to get at, like if they.
No, I'm just trying to figure out if you worked that many years in the district and the last Well, I guess you could declare retired.
You're trying to figure out like what you would lose if you
Well,
donate,
I don't
never
think
used
that-
any?
In the past, they didn't look at it as a
No,
loss.
I mean, I agree. I
I'm
just
just
wasn't sure if
wondering.
that's what you were like.
When I read that, I was trying to figure, say, if you donate 30 years, 35 years, and then all of a sudden something major comes up, I guess the thing is, well, you should just claim.
Well, so the 90 days
After-
in here that says that you can use 90 days from the bank during the course of your career. If that is because 90 days of continuous absence related to a disability is what qualifies you for long-term disability through the state. And so that's sort of where that number comes from. If you are going to be out for more than 90 days related to the same disability, then you would be applying for long-term disability and receive payments through that rather than through the sick leave bank.
So suppose it was a different type of illness.
So if it's not the same, that we use the 90-day standard because we didn't have a good way of kind of differentiating, if one person continually used from the bank every year and drew 90 days out every year, we don't want someone to misuse the bank to the detriment of other employees. So we kind of went with the 90 days across the board within your career. But, if we feel like there's another way to specify that.
I guess I'm just trying to think like some others have thought, like the way we lost the bank the last time. There was a slim, although I thought it was clearly stated, but they were able to get an attorney that showed that it wasn't as clearly stated as it should have been or whatever happened in the end. And so I'm just trying to foresee ahead of time, are there any little minor issues that we have not addressed?
I appreciate
Well,
the
I'm-
confidence, yeah. We are aiming to have made it all very clear for the employees, but I know that there is a lot of confusion. That's one of the things that some of the members of the committee have brought back is that there is some confusion among staff particularly about how to use the bank if you are in need of the bank, as well as some suggestions for the administration about how we can better communicate to staff who have enrolled in the bank. And so we're working on that sort of outside of the policy discussion. We have an FAQ that had been online, but we're going to try to, add some more information to that. We have discussed, better communication with those who are in the bank. So we'll be working on all of that behind the scenes to try to clear up any of the confusion or things that are not entirely.
I applaud. I think this is something we need. The employees need it, so it's a good thing. I just want to make sure if there are any little loopholes that we have not seen, we identify them. And say, for instance, if they decided the next year not to join, they have that option. Because I don't want somebody to say, well, they didn't give me my days, so I'm just not going to participate anymore. They are giving 1 day per year.
Yes, you have to opt in every year. You have to fill out the form every year. So
So if it's not working for them, they just don't opt back in.
they just don't fill
Okay,
it.
all right, sounds good.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
And you're welcome to go, just the record public. Go
Sure.
through and just, if there's like a brief explanation or it's self-explanatory, just say.
okay, so let me see then which ones, I guess I covered the
You
first
were
page.
on, yeah.
Yep.
Starting with leave of procedures are not dependent on employee.
Yeah. So, in this section on the second page at the top, the bank procedures, we added the, statement that the 20 absences for intermittent leave had to be related to your intermittent catastrophic illness because, you could have missed because of something else. And those 20 days do not count towards the 20 days that you have to be absent before you start pulling from the sick leave bank. So we were just clarifying that. We did also clarify under eligibility that employees who are on a letter of agreement qualify to join the sick leave bank. We had a lot of questions about that last year when it opened and it wasn't something that we had considered. So we wanted to make sure we were clear about that. If you earn sick leave, then you can participate in the bank. We did clarify as well that the membership would be for 1 year. So the July 1st to June 30th, each qualifying employee must reapply for enrollment for the period they want to be a member of the bank. So just, again, trying to clarify that you do have to apply again every year. In section 3A, I was just removing the portion last year when the board undertook this policy, we were already into the summer. And so the date had to be a little off for the 24-25 school year. So now that we are through that, I just thought it would be a good time to go ahead and remove that from the policy so that we had the same dates going. On page 3, section A2, again, that was clarifying that your 20 absences have to be related to the catastrophic illness. And that you as an employee, this was something we did get some questions about, you as an employee can submit your application before you have been absent for 20 days. So if, for example, you have a medical procedure and you know that you're going to need 60 days of recovery, and you're going to run out of leave time, you can go ahead and submit your application so that the board can consider it and award the days, but the days will not kick in, become effective until you have been absent for those 20 days. So we just wanted to make it clear that people didn't have to wait until they had been absent for 20 days before they submitted the application, because we did have some questions of applicants wanting to backdate. Sometimes even a month or 2 months before they submitted their application. And we don't feel like that is a good way to use the system. So we just wanted to make it clear that once you know you're going to be out, you can go ahead and apply, even if you're not awarded the days. And the same under section 3 of that. Section D2. We were just clarifying the word position, decision. We thought that that was a better position. It's not there. D3, we wanted to clarify again the backdating. Like I said, we did get several applications that were backdated by a long period of time. And so we just wanted to make that clear that the committee will only award days back to the date that the personnel department received the application, not before that. In section D6, yeah, thank you. That was repetitive, and so we just deleted that section because it says it in the statements above. In section I, again, it was removing the 24-25 school year information. That is all.
Anybody else have any questions or concerns?
I think I need, Christine, can you go back to section 2B? I think you answered what my question was.
2B?
Yeah, 2B. So can we say in that statement, must we apply each annual enrollment? Just think, because there could be a situation where you have to do an extra enrollment. They don't have to apply doing that.
That's
You know
true.
what I mean?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Any opposition to that? I think that provides some clarity. Okay.
Yeah, so yeah. 3, sorry.
I know it's hard to hear.
It says a member may cancel his or her membership during the open enrollment period by written notification.
Yeah, so I think that now that you read it out loud, I think it was intended to say if you applied and then we have not actually drawn your day yet. But I do think that by using the word membership, maybe that's not clear. So perhaps we should clarify that you can cancel your application rather than membership. That's a good.
That's it. Okay.
Very attentive to detail.
Yes, thank you. This has definitely been a work in progress and lots of great questions and suggestions from those who have been on the committee. So we appreciate them and they have taken time several times throughout the year to come over here after their school hours and participate and review the application. So we appreciate that. And we will keep learning and growing and hopefully making it more beneficial to our employees. Well, that's good.
Have you heard anything from the employees generally as to how they feel about it?
Honestly, we heard very little from staff. I'm looking at the other members of the committee that are here. Very little from the staff in general. Some of the members of the board have brought, some feedback from their local schools or questions that they had. But as a whole, I really haven't heard much about it. And everyone else.
So do we anticipate that we're gonna get enough, like 30% this year?
We hope so. We definitely plan to put out more information about it this year, so I hope that that will make it easier for people to understand whether it's beneficial for them to join or not.
I think the timing this year is going to be better too, because last year we kind of got a late start with
Yeah.
August. That's when so much is going on. We're going to get, I think we'll be in better timing communication as well.
So the goal is to get something up for the end of this school year so that they are aware.
Yes, open enrollment will be in the month of May, so they should be getting something before the end of the week.
Gotcha.
And then we'll continue
Hopefully just with
to
having
push information out more and more. Yeah.
This works.
Any other questions about that one? All right, we also have a couple of finance policies here, so we're gonna start with policy DJ, which is our purchasing policy. This one, actually, as I was reviewing some of our policies, I realized that it should have been updated with the procurement code just to include the new date that the newest procurement code was passed, and so that is the only proposed change to this.
Good.
To me,
Sorry about that. We should
No.
have got that when we did those updates
That's
last year.
We do this. Never ending mission.
Yes, it is never ending. So to that point, next up is policy DGD, which is the credit card use policy. This one, was just reviewed in July of 2023, as well as our internal procedures for use of our P cards, as we generally call them. And, I know that the board had some questions and wanted to review this, so we wanted to put it on the agenda. As it stands, the district does not have any recommended changes to the policy itself. But Ms. Minier can explain a little bit more maybe about our internal procedures, and if there's anything that we do feel like we need to clarify, we can certainly do that.
As Ms. Graham said, we update our policies and procedures when we also went to the new state code. And again, we fine tune these as we go along when we find something that needs to be tweaked. So our procurement card program comes with policies and procedures that each card user, the card holder must review, and then they sign an agreement stating that they have read them in like some areas that they are under no circumstance allowed to make any personal purchases for themselves or for others. No alcohol, just some basic things that they need to know. So they sign that, and then also in our procedures, guidelines are violations. If we find that they are not following the proper guidelines, then we will give them a written warning, then we can reduce the credit limit that they're able to use. Most folks are doing a great job with this. The request forms are completed prior to any purchases. They stay within their budgetary limits. That is transparency reports, everything is transparent. We brief them all the time. We remind in principals meetings, we work with our financial secretary, just make sure that everything that you have is T's crossed, I's dotted. We have to have the signature of the principal or the assistant principal, whoever is reviewing these. Again, it's supposed to be that the request is made prior to the purchase. We also are get all the detailed information in electronic format from the schools, from the departments. So we are reviewing those in the finance department as well to make sure that we have all the required information. And again, they stay within their budgets. There's different buckets of money, and all of it is shown on the transparency report. So they get a district allocation of monies that they use. They have school funding monies, and then they also have club monies. So sometimes you might see something in there that if the Beta Club took a field trip or something, we might put money on there. But we have all backup documentation. So anytime we get a FOIA request for any of that information.
Which reports show the buckets? Again, I know I get sometimes emails about it. I know there's one that kind of just shows general charges, and then there's a different one that shows like the different buckets they come from.
Well, so for the schools, they get an allocation from the district, which we call their district funds. And those are in their general fund. It's based on the number of pupils that they have. We give a base amount to them to buy supplies and instructional items. Then they also have monies that are received, for clubs. And that's another bucket. And then the other bucket is the money that they receive at the schools, registration fees go into that, parking fees go into that. I'm looking at Liz.
Pictures.
See the pictures. Just things that are handled directly at the school that they are able to utilize, so they stay within that big bucket as well.
I didn't have any proposed changes other than 2 words, which is just me being nitpicky. I would just gonna say for the purpose of conducting official business on behalf of the district and its students. Yeah, which is the first line. The district may obtain credit cards for the purpose of conducting official business. And I just thought about changing staff members will immediately return districts to must immediately.
Shall.
Yeah, I don't know, every time will and must, I just. And that's it, that's all I had, so if anybody else has any questions or changes or comments. Then that one's good with those questions.
Excellent, thank you. And the last one we have for tonight is policy DHA, which is a new policy. So the board asked us to consider a policy regarding contracts within the district. And so this is the model policy from SCASBA, which we did not have in our policy bank before. And so we are proposing this here with some of the first 2 things that are in red were basically blanks options from the model policy about how to fill that in, and then one recommendation to remove the final paragraph from the model because that is about the district receiving payment, and we felt like it was very unclear and might be very unwieldy to bring something to the board every time the district were to enter a contract where we would receive payment, like
We're not really
fundraising or
concerned
something.
about getting.
Yeah.
We're more concerned about.
Happy to get back.
Give us all money.
Yeah. So those are the recommendations that this policy be adopted with those changes. I'm happy to talk a little bit more about that, or if you have questions.
I did have questions. Where did we come up with the $250,000 threshold? And do we think, that's good, that's too much? I mean, it seems like a lot, but I also know like we're a
Right.
larger district, so I'm
Right.
just.
Right, well, we had, pulled some of our neighboring districts, and those, if that's what Charleston. They started with a lower amount after the debacle that happened. in their district,
What
and
was
then they
their
up
lower
to,
amount?
50.
Do we have anything like regarding like maybe more comparable district, like financially in size wise than Charleston? Like,
I didn't really do a whole lot of
like,
research.
yeah,
on
no,
that
you're
before
fine. It
that.
just seems like a lot, but I'm also not like.
Well, the other thing that we wanted, that we included in here that we wanted to bring to you is that if, like we had talked about before, something that Charleston does, and I'm bringing up Charleston because Lisa Sizzler came from
Yeah.
there, and so she worked heavily in their budget. And they prepared a listing, which I think we've talked to y'all about, getting together about listing in the budget of operational contracts. So any operational contract, if it's $10,000 to $1 million, which would be our SRO contracts. If those are included in the budget and y'all see that list and approve it, then we wouldn't have to bring that to you every time. So, and then Mr. Gordy would be allowed to sign those contracts.
Yeah.
So y'all would approve it at budget time. Also for contracts that, the reason we picked 250, I think, is also for construction contracts.
Yeah.
So we passed the referendum and we know that we have large contracts. We would want to bring, and also anything new that's over $250,000 to y'all. So y'all would see all of the contracts, then anything construction, especially construction with everything going on. Most everything would be caught with the 250.
Yeah, I don't wanna like get to the point where we're like micromanaging and you can't do what you need to and you need to wait on board approval. Could we add something in there with some sort of like reporting requirement? So like all contracts over 50,000 are reported like in a quarterly report.
Okay, sure. I think that's what they also do in Charleston.
Yeah, that way, there's at least like a check and balance mechanism in there. And so I don't know where it'd be appropriate to add. Yeah. I think quarterly, I've seen some monthly, I've seen some quarterly, what y'all, I feel like quarterly is sufficient to you.
Yeah, yes.
That gets a little excessive.
And you
Sometimes,
want it to be, I'm sorry, did you say a financial amount or
I
just
wrote
quarterly report?
add reporting requirement, all contracts over 50,000.
Okay.
Like just like a report of that quarterly of like what we've signed on to and committed to.
Yeah, the amount, yeah.
You've signed this on to, committed to.
Yeah, I am just reading it a quick skim. I feel like it belongs with those first two paragraphs up there because the other ones are sort of individualized sections about finding authority and construction, et cetera.
Yeah.
So maybe we can just add it into that.
it'll be some quarters are gonna be more heavily,
Yeah,
report will be bigger in some quarters. Like right now, we're trying to work on renewals for the new year to see.
I think like my biggest thing is that we're spending money on something, whether it's like a thought exchange or whatever it is. I think it'd be good for us to know after the fact, like what contracts we've all signed on to, what we're doing, just as a kind of, you know, that you're gonna have to report it to us, the superintendent, whoever it is, will know that that's gonna have to be in the report, so we're gonna know about it, so that creates a level of, okay, well, the board's gonna see it, accountability, but also like, it's important to us, like going to budget season, we know how we're spending money, what is going on, and where it's all been allocated to, so that's kind of my reasoning for that, yeah.
Anything else about that one? And that is all I have for tonight.
And seeing we have no public comment, I need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Made by Ms. Dr. Woodley, seconded by Mr. Guthrie, and we are adjourned.